Good morning and welcome to the Food Bank Show on this, I don't know, 4th or 5th Sunday in lockdown. Hope you're well. Today we've got a great team lined up for you. Seema Lotra is going to be here this morning, but if you've been noticing, he's been on literally every single TV channel recently, and he's just been called up, so he can't be with us this morning. Seema doing a great job spreading the message around what we can all do to be healthy during lockdown. But do not fear, because Dr. Dan Maggs, one of my bestest mates, who's a brilliant GP, is going to be with us this morning. And we're going to be talking about what can we do to help the actual nurses and the doctors stay healthy, also sort of during lockdown and post-lockdown. We do have a huge problem. They're all great, and we know that that's why we're clapping every Thursday. Hats off to all our NHS staff, but overall, because of several things, the environment they're in, the food they find in the hospital, the stress levels they're under, their diet on the whole is probably on the lower end of the scale compared to the average in the UK. So we'll have Dr. Dan on shortly, and then we're going to have Lou Walker joining us. I first met Lou at Real Food Rocks last year, and she's done loads and loads of research about what we call the cake culture in the UK, where whenever it's somebody's birthday in the office, we bring a cake. Whenever somebody's not feeling well, we bring a cake, and then when we say thank you, we bring a cake. And of course, if you work in a busy working environment, there's like cake almost every day. Why is it that we bring something that we know is unhealthy, that's causing obesity, that's causing diabetes, that's causing ill health, that's causing early death rates? One of the biggest causes is cake, and yet that's what we reward people with. So we're going to be talking with Lou Walker later on about that culture and what can we do to change it, and the research he's been doing. And remember, of course, while we're doing all this, if you can make a donation to the food banks, it would be so appreciated. Right now, I was watching, in fact, BBC last night, saying how the demand on the food banks has gone sky high during lockdown. So they need more donations in terms of you and I dropping off our food into those collection boxes in our local supermarkets. But they also need some more cash, because right now they've had to completely change the model of giving completely, because the community centres, many of them, of which there were 1,250 before lockdown, have had to close their doors in terms of face-to-face. So they're having to do lots of home deliveries to families that literally, without your support and without my support, won't be putting meals on the table of their children today. We really need to help, and whether it be £5 or £10, it all goes a long way. I've made a pledge to match all donations pound for pound, and of course the government are doing their bit if we're taxpayers, because they will top it up sort of 20% as well. So if you give £4 or £5, it ends up being £12, £13. So everything you could give, £5, £10 would be greatly appreciated. You can either go to Just Giving, or you can go, I got it the right way around today. I could now be a weather news reporter. I always get it back to front with all these green screens. Or you could go Just Giving, or of course text your donations. Every day we're also asking you to go to Facebook, to Primal Living, and show us what you cooked for the first time yesterday. And I was going to be so proud today to show you what I cooked for the first time yesterday, because I cooked 3 Primal pizzas without flour, different ones to I've ever done before. However, I forgot one of the ingredients in the base, and while they tasted lovely, it was just a crumbled mess. So no points for me for my attempts yesterday. They did taste great, Jack, yeah?
It tasted great, yeah.
My son's over there.
Apart like nothing.
But it just all fell apart. I forgot to put the cheese in the mix, but there you go. So yeah, if you can send us photos of what you've been cooking in lockdown, that will be great, because it is all about inspiring everybody to try new nutritional food, dense nutritional food. Today I thought I would highlight the sprouts, the Brussels sprouts, because it's one of those Marmite type vegetables that some people love, some people hate. But what we found with our children, and I've brought 7 children up now and 2 grandchildren, is that sprouts, if you dress them up in terms of, rather than just doing what you normally do with them, if you steam them, if you then add a bit of bacon, if you add a bit of something nice and spicy, or we throw in sometimes things to change the colour of them, make it a bit reddy by putting, what do I put in to make mine red the other day? Oh, red cabbage, bacon, oh, gorgeous. And I thought I'd mention them today because they're also part of the cruciferous family, which is what we were talking about yesterday. Now, if you are new to us, every time you see one of these programs, write down what the food fact was, just the name, Brussels sprouts. Go back on previous videos, write down as many as you can. And at the end of lockdown, we'll have a competition. And like most competitions, there'll be a winner. And that winner will receive up to £1,000 of free jewellery or a weekend stay in a boutique hotel in Warwickshire. And if you like, my family and I, and Nick and Poppy, who put this show together, will all join you for a healthy meal on the Saturday evening. So you can either choose jewellery or you can choose a weekend with us. And all you got to do for that, write down the food facts of Brussels sprouts today, go back to all the other videos, write down as many as you can, and that will be great. Do we have Dan Maggs with us? We do. Good morning, Dan. How are you, my friend?
I'm very good, thank you, Steve. Can you see my picture, or can you see a recipe that
I can see a recipe
on the screen at the moment? This is one of my favourite Brussels sprouts recipes. It's not off my website, by the way; it's somebody else's. So, yeah, balsamic vinegar, chicken thighs with roasted with Brussels sprouts, garlic, and a bit of red onion. Absolutely incredible.
Why is that not on yours yet?
Well, that would be plagiarism. Dan,
do what I do. Just change one or two ingredients. It's your recipe then, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, it's a really tasty one, Steve. So definitely recommend that. Brussels sprouts, absolutely one of my favourites, especially when they're in season. How are you?
I'm all right.
Sorry, I was late onto the call.
That's all right. Thank you for stepping in. Hey, I had a cooking disaster last night. So I do a mix between the Caldasis pizza base and the one out of my book. And I forgot one of the ingredients. And I spent ages.
What did you forget, Steve?
Well, you need something in to bind it. So I put the eggs in, but I forgot to put the grated cheese into the base. And the grated cheese holds it all together. And I put it in the oven while I was doing it. I did 3 pizzas for the entire family. It was going to be a pizza night last night, different flavours, different. So I did a ham and pineapple. I did get anchovies, and then I did. Remember you and I had a pizza very naughtily early in the year when we were skiing, the meat one.
Yes.
Up in the mountain. I copied that meat one, so I fried all the meat up, put it all in, got the bases out. All looked fine. I didn't realise till we served it all up. Put everything on, put it back in the oven, got it out. They all looked great. Couldn't get it off the parchment paper. It was a mess.
Yeah.
It tasted great, but not worthy.
I think pizza's okay up a mountain, isn't it? I think if you go above 2,000 meters, carbohydrates don't count. Is that right?
Well, you run a website called Carb Dodging, so you tell me. That's certainly what you told me on the day, and it also shows that occasionally you can break even your own rules.
Absolutely.
I did say that to you when we were up that mountain, didn't I? I said, Dr. Dan, why have you ordered the pizza? So your website's called Carb Dodging, and you said, look, now and again, it's okay.
Yeah, and this is why I wanted to call it carb dodging, Steve. Okay, because it's I think we can all get a little bit too serious sometimes with things. And yes, it's important, and I'm a big believer in the 80-20 rule, and that it's what you do 80% of the time that is and probably more, to be honest, is the most important, really, Steve, in terms of the long term about these kind of things. And I think we can get really too hung up. And there's one thing I don't compromise on, that's sugar. But like the rest of the time, I think it's you have to be realistic about living life, especially if you want to make it a long-term thing, really. And a little bit of something like that every once in a while, not unless you have a real severe like metabolic disorder like diabetes, isn't going to cause you too much of an issue.
Yeah, and you say the 80-20 rule, but I think spending a lot of time with you, it's more like the 95-5 rule with you. It's just that one occasion. Yeah. We saw that pizza come out the restaurant. We were in James Blunt's restaurant, weren't we? We looked at that pizza and we went, that is the best thing on the menu.
It did look fantastic.
We better have it. Now, talking of carb dodging, the way we were going to take this topic today was that obviously Asim's been talking a lot about the Prime Minister being 16 stone in weight, and it's the same height as I think he's about an inch taller than me, so not very tall. Therefore, you know, whether he's technically obese or not, we don't know his body fat percent. It could be big and heavy bone, but definitely he's overweight. And Asim was saying on national television that, you know, part of the reason it was so severe for the PM was his weight. But also with our NHS staff, you know, if you look at the national average stats on obesity and overweight, on average, those that work in hospital apparently statistically are more overweight than the general public. And, you know, carb dodging, as I saw sadly in hospital with my mother when she was bedridden for a couple of days last year in hospital, you can't carb dodge in hospital, or certainly the one we were in. There was nothing on the recipe that wasn't heavy in carbohydrates. So I think the question is, as we, you know, eventually come out of COVID, you know, our NHS is obviously brilliant, doctors, nurses, care workers, everybody absolutely fantastic. But do we really help them stay healthy, and what changes could we make as we come out the other side of this to try and support our NHS in ways of better food, better nutrition?
Really, really interesting question, Steve. I mean, I've certainly got first-hand experience of this from my own days as a junior doctor. So I get it. I really do. Like, you know, you're doing long, stressful shifts in a hospital where, you know, realistically, you know, a 12-hour shift, you know, and you're busy on the wards and stuff. Yeah, you're supposed to get your breaks and stuff, but it just doesn't work like that for junior doctors. You know, even in my time as a junior doctor, it didn't, I certainly didn't have it the worst. We were subject to the European Working Time Directive at my time. So people who had it, you know, the generation of doctors that went before me, 10 years before me, had it far worse, really. And so actually it was a case of just grabbing what food you could at whenever you could, whether it's day or night. And you know, during the day, you're kind of you're running up to the canteen and grabbing whatever you can grab. And in the, you know, the evening when the canteen's closed, it's the vending machines. And the same thing overnight. It's just seeing what you can grab from the vending machine. You know, at best that was a sandwiches. At worst, that's a Mars bar and a can of Coke. So you know, I really do sympathise, and I think, and I know that Lou's very interested in this area, and it talks about, we have to think about the way people show appreciation, and looking at how the nurses are treated on the ward. You know, very, very common when the patient's discharged and the family come to pick that up. It's, well, how can we thank the amazing nurses for their work during this time? And it's in terms of everything that's they've done. Well, actually, how about we go and pick up a box of chocolates or have pack of biscuits or something on the way, because that is what we would that's what people do, isn't it? That's what people do, and it's a fairly easy, quick and easy thing to do. And then they've got this box of chocolates, and you know, it's the fourth patient that's been discharged that day. So there's a box of chocolates, there's a box of sweets, there's a box of all sorts of bits and bobs on the ward. And hang on a second, you're a little bit low on energy, so it's a bit easy to go and pick that up. And little me as a junior doctor, not so little me, as a junior doctor, well, the nurses are there. Oh, you know, don't worry, help yourself to the sweets while you're here, doc. We know you're working hard and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, it's about how we show our appreciation in society. Is another big factor, because, you know, hospitals are just a hotbed of sweets. I remember one day when I was working in the cardiology ward in coronary care unit at our local hospital, somebody brought in a fruit basket. It was the biggest news throughout the hospital, Steve, because there was this beautiful basket of fruit sitting in the cardiology office. And I don't think anybody had ever seen anything that wasn't biscuits and sweets being brought in. So, you know, I think for anybody watching this, my message would be, you know, just have a little think about what you're actually doing and stuff. And actually, I know Lou's got some ideas about how we talk about how we show our appreciation, really. And yeah, it's a real problem, Steve. you're not you'd not have to be very observant to notice that many of our healthcare staff are carrying quite a lot of extra weight. I certainly gained weight during those stressful junior doctor years. If you're working on a ward for 10, 15, 20 years doing night shifts, long shifts, it's ever likely that you're going to end up gaining some weight.
And for those that don't know, Dan, how much heavier back then were you than you are today?
Ooh, I was about 25, 30 kilograms heavier back then. Probably gained a bit of muscle since then, which takes a bit. So probably about 30 kilograms of fat
That's
lost.
about 4 stone, 3 stone, 4 stone?
Ooh, I think it's about 5. Yeah,
5
I'm not
stone,
sure.
wow.
Yeah, a good old chunk.
And I guess part of the problem, of course, is because you're not taught nutrition. And again, correct me if I make any statement that's wrong, but there's no real focus on nutrition as you're in med school. And therefore, if there's no real focus on nutrition, and because you people, doctors, nurses, you're so good at following the rules because you have to follow government guidelines. So if the current government guidelines say you should eat that sort of balanced food, and if you're not trained in nutrition, well, then if that cake arrives or that pack of biscuits, well, it's on the list of approved things in one sense. So you're going to eat it because you think, well, that can't be the problem because it's kind of still been recommended by the government.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know to a certain degree that eating sweets is unhealthy. Okay, I don't think there's any kind of, but it's about for me as an individual, I always struggled with moderation. Okay, and it's like, oh yeah, everything in moderation, that's absolutely fine. And do you know what, Steve? For some people, everything in moderation is absolutely fine. But I was never somebody who was able to do moderation. I could never do particularly moderation with sweets or biscuits. I could never do moderation with, carbohydrates, pasta portions, breakfast cereal, these kind of things. And, if you can, that's great. And I always used to think it's a lack of willpower, Steve, and I used to kind of beat myself up over it, really. But now I kind of have a better understanding of the science behind it, what it does to our insulin levels, our blood glucose levels, how we drop our blood glucose levels in response, how it makes us hungry, how they're so poor. That cereal is so poor in nutrition. They have to add nutrients back into it so people don't become deficient in our essential vitamins and minerals. That's what a fortified cereal is, because a grain is so poor in terms of its actual inbuilt nutrition for us. Now, I think part of the reason is because you were hungry. It's just because we're so malnourished, really, in terms of those essential, the B vitamins and everything that we need on a regular basis.
Yeah, well, when you feel hungry, the brain can't work out. There's two reasons why we can feel hungry, isn't that? You can feel hungry simply because you need more energy or lack of nutrients. But the brain can't decipher from one, so you can go and eat loads and loads of pasta or loads of Kellogg's or loads of bread, and you can still feel hungry straight away afterwards because you still haven't had the nutrition. So the brain goes, I'm still hungry. And even if it was about hunger because you need more energy, well, the fact that insulin grabs all excess sugar, bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, and shoves it in the fat store so quickly, an hour after you've had that McDonald's, you're hungry again. Probably even hungrier than you were before the first one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think, and also if you start adding sugary drinks into that, you've got a whole new level of problems coming in there, really, haven't you?
Yeah.
I had a phone call from my mother-in-law who works in a surgery the other day. Can we drop round? Right, McDonald's have been round. Okay, McDonald's have been round to the surgery. They have dropped off crates of orange juice, the Tropicana orange juice. Okay, it's going to go out of date. They want to get rid of it. So all of a sudden, there's these industrial pallets worth of Tropicana being dropped off to the GP surgeries. And do you know what? I can kind of see, like, is it to do with and this is happening in hospitals and stuff. Okay, there's a lot of companies are going, I think it was one of the curry houses in Warwick, which is where we live. there was a news article that made the national news the other day that one of the guys there was making something like 300 or 400 curries to supply the NHS and key workers in the area free of charge. Is it a cynical marketing tactic, Steve, or is it just somebody wanting to help?
Well, let's go back to the curry. Depends first of all, McDonald's. I have a passionate hate for the devil's kitchen, as I call it. And therefore, McDonald's straight away, I'd go cynical marketing because, I'll give a perfect example. So I'm overstocked on one of my multivitamins. So I am, as a random act of kindness, whenever there's a box of delivery going out from a jewelry maker or Gems next week, any room in those boxes, we're putting in a spare pot of multivitamins with a little letter of why. But the honesty in there is random act of kindness, but we won't sell them in time before they go out of date on this one particular one we've got. So is there an element of marketing in there? Yeah, of course there is. But at least I'm putting in something that helps people be healthy, up the vitamin D levels, up the vitamin C levels. Is it cynical? I don't know if it's cynical, but I think I'm doing good at the same time. But dropping off orange juice to a doctor's surgery to the uninformed that go, well, that's fruit, therefore it must be good for me, therefore, thank you, McDonald's, when we all know, and we learned from so many experts like Dr. James Gornick, that it rots your teeth, that it's full of sugar, all the fiber's probably gone out of it because of the way they've processed it. Cynical.
Yeah, and I, do you know what? I think it's a difficult one to kind of pin down, really, isn't it? Because there are, I can kind of see the idea of, you don't know if it's just someone well-meaning some well-meaning mid-level manager or something going, actually, this is going to go out of date. We may as well drop it somewhere, hadn't we? Do you know what I mean? And I get that, really. So, it's
also, by the way, cheaper to give it away than it is to then have to try and dispose of it properly.
Absolutely.
So quite often disposing of things that are out of date is quite expensive. But back to your curry man doing it. Well, it depends how healthy that curry was, and probably it's certainly going to be better than dropping off cakes and donuts. You know what I mean? So I think
absolutely
fair play to him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's interesting, isn't it? But I certainly know that there's kind of been a bit of a storm, really, about kind of various donut manufacturers taking crate loads into hospitals and stuff like that. And it's it's a really difficult one, Steve, because it's an incredibly stressful time.
Yeah.
And we know that at the moment, it's incredibly stressful time. And we know, because we talk about this a lot, that stress and sleep deprivation makes you make worse choices about your nutrition.
Yeah.
And, we're having this protracted period of high stress, really. So, and is it them trying to be kind? Is it cynical marketing? I think I know when you're taking crates of donuts into a place. I think I know which side of cynical marketing it actually falls, Steve. But they also say that when a man's salary depends on his job, then you turn a blind eye to the obvious. So I would think that anybody working for a cake manufacturing company would say, yeah, it's fine. We're not a cigarette company. We're not that bad. It's not that balanced. They'd be saying, well, it's a balanced diet, and therefore I get my salary out something that's absolutely fine. The other thing you mentioned a minute ago, which I think this is why one of the things I lobby hard against is, trying to change that 5 years of education for doctors, because, 1 ounce of prevention is better than a ton of cure. And yet you're 100%. All trained all about diagnosis, cure, medication, and so on. One of the things that has come out of these daily chats every day from 2 or 3 doctors is not to underestimate the importance of being in a more relaxed environment when you're eating, because fast food, eaten fast, where your body, you're on the run as a nurse, you're on the run as a doctor, you're eating the wrong things, but in the wrong way, then your cortisol levels up, you're in that fight or flight mode because you're on the go, and therefore you don't digest the food very well. So I think there's 2 parts to that education process that's needed for our brilliant doctors and nurses during sort of med schools, and I think that is understanding what you should eat and the effect the food has on your body, but also the importance of taking that little bit of time out to slow down the eating process so you unlock
the goodness of the nutrition. I mean, how you eat and what you eat are both quite important topics, I think.
Yeah, and of course, when you eat, as we know, in terms of like the timing of when we eat and stuff. I mean, these, we certainly, know that a lot of our healthcare workers are working shift work and stuff, and I know from people who are in my programs and stuff that can really upset their shift work can really upset their weight loss efforts and healthy eating efforts, because when you're tired, it's so easy just to want to just. And I remember this from when I used to work as a GP before I kind of became enlightened, if you like. You work a busy day, you're getting home at 7 o'clock knowing that you've got to come back on the computer when you get home to finish off your paperwork. It's a lot easier to pick up a pizza on the way back, Steve, than it is to cook a healthy meal. So the levels to this are, there's multiple levels to this really, in terms of, our working patterns, our working habits, the supply of food, culture, all these kind of things. It's a difficult thing to overcome.
Yeah, and it's changing the norm, isn't it? Although my GP, I mean, you're talking about dropping cakes off in hospitals. My GP the other week, or one of my local GPs, not particularly my GP, but dropped off 2 cauliflowers on my front door for me, as opposed to a bunch of cakes.
Nice fellow.
What a nice guy he must be. Right, let's... That's serious, by the way, everybody. A GP in my area knocked on my door, ran off because of the virus, but had dropped 2 cauliflowers on my doorstep because the day before I said I couldn't find them in the local supermarket. His name, by the way, is Dr. Dan Maggs. Right, very, very kind.
I put it in a box of prosecco. Did you notice, just to confuse you?
Because you knew I'd take it in quicker, probably. Oh, very, very good. What happened to the prosecco, Dan?
Well, Steve, that's a different story.
Don't tell me you donated it to the local surgery. But while we're on this thing about appreciation, we must not stop appreciating NHS staff and care workers and nurses and doctors, because a show of appreciation is so powerful to the mental well-being of people, especially under times of workload, stress, anxiety. One of the doctors we had on the other day, we were talking about post-stress disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. And she was saying that one of the things that can really, really help is people realizing that people around them are still human, and the belief that human society is strong. So we still need to be sort of doing the clap every Thursday, giving the gifts to the nurses and doctors after we come out of the hospital, but it's just changing what that looks like. You might look a bit strange taking in a couple of pairs of cauliflower, maybe you would, but taking in a really nice written letter, a really nice card, something that you've made, anything that's not going to...
And I think your friend James Goulnick, our mutual friend James Goulnick, he's very interested in alternative methods of reward, and that's what his project is about. I think it's called the Reward Project, isn't it?
The Reward Project. I've got his book somewhere. Yeah. It's called.
And so it's about how you can, and he's coming at it from a dental perspective, and how you achieve like with children and stuff. I think one example he gives is.
No, it's fine.
Is the young child going for their first haircut, and the hairdresser reaching, or the barber reaching for a lollipop in order to say well done. Is that the best way of going about this kind of thing, or is there another way of actually going about it, really? So and I think it does take a little bit more thinking. It does take a little bit more effort sometimes, and and it's probably the hospital shop that's selling the biscuits at the end of the day. So it does take a lot more effort, and especially when you've got someone who's ill coming out of hospital. You might have been preparing the house, you might be busy, you might be tired yourself. It's not easy, is it, really?
And back to James's rewards one, as you know, I'm a father of 7, so the little ones, when they're at school, there's like 30 kids in the class. That means literally once every 2 weeks we're at a party. What do you get? The goodie bag. And now it's a competition for parents to see who can put the most sweets into the goodie bag. And they get bigger and they get bigger. And before you know it, they've got enough sweets to last till the next party. It's just, we've got to change it for stickers or teddy bears or something else. Anyway.
And you think we've got it bad seasonally with, Christmas and Valentine's Day and Easter. You go to the States, they've got the Labor Day weekend, then they've got Thanksgiving, then they've got the Christmas season, then they've got the same ones that we have and stuff. The cultural events, what were religious feast days and stuff, that have been essentially monopolized by marketers. I'm still trying to work out what chocolate eggs have got to do with Easter. And the religious festival Easter, Steve. I'm not quite sure there, but
well, don't wind me up on that one, because that is one where my family definitely break all the rules at Easter.
Yes,
with our children. Like the egg hunt is getting bigger and bigger. I tell you what, the egg hunt next year, to make it even better than this year, is probably going to stretch all the way from my house to yours. I mean, it's that ridiculous now. We used to give them little cups to put them in. We have to give them a bucket now. And it's just ridiculous. We've got to change it.
Nice.
Right. Sheila says, eat real food, get healthy, protect the NHS, save lives. Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot, Sheila. Let's add in front of stay at home, protect the NHS, save lives. Let's add eat real food, get healthy, stay at home, protect the NHS, save lives. Great one, great one. Andrew Hunt, who's been dropping in and out quite a lot of these chats, ex-army, furious at the food that they get fed in the army, says good morning all. Sheila says morning to everybody, a lovely sunny Sunday morning. I don't know where you are, Sheila, because it certainly isn't in the Midlands, or it wasn't when I came into the bunker. Good morning everyone. Hi and good morning. I put cheese on sprouts for my granddaughter, says Jackie.
Nice.
Cheese on sprouts. I put cheese into my cauliflower mash and the kids love it.
I put cheese.
My son's been cheeky. My son's been cheeky. He says, but you forget to put it in your pizzas. That's why they were crap last night. Thanks, son. Go on ahead. Say hello, because people don't realise you're there, Jack, if they're just dipping in. Say hello. Are you there? There he is. Cheeky son.
Hi, Dan. Hey, Jack.
He says hello, Dan. Tracy made some flaxseed crackers yesterday. Make some flaxseed crackers. Put them in a nice Tupperware box. Take them into your local GP surgery or the hospital. Let them know what real. Say again, mate.
Stick them on Facebook.
And stick them on Facebook, says Jack to Tracy. Let's see them. Let's see them.
Oh, interestingly, Steve, you've just touched on a tiny little interesting point that is happening at the moment. Is hospitals are only wanting, snacks and stuff that are packeted.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay, so we can't take them in then. No, that's not fair. Tracy made hers from the Caldesi recipe. The Caldesi's cookbook is absolutely amazing. It's called How to Reverse Diabetes Cookbook, and their first one was called the Diabetes Weight Loss Cookbook. If anybody wants to get those, they are great cooking books. Jackie says, my partner is eating keto now and already is up at 6 a.m, no lagging, and his shoulder pain has gone. It's amazing, isn't it, how many things you can fix by just changing your diet?
I love it. These unexpected things. One of my clients the other day messaged me and said, I was due for a hip operation, which has obviously been cancelled because of the whole coronavirus thing, but I'm off all my painkillers. And, part of this is a decrease in inflammation. Part of this is, weight loss, in terms of stress on the joints as well. But isn't that just fantastic? The impact of simply eating, good quality, real low carbohydrate food. Yeah, absolutely crazy.
And it's surprising how many things go away, don't they, when you lose your weight? I've stopped snoring. In fact, my wife snores more than me at the moment.
Me too.
But don't tell her that. Stop snoring. And aches and pains. My knees don't ache as much as they used to ache. It's fascinating. Poppy says, I would always take chocolates and sweet stuff to the lovely staff that took care of me in ICU back in 2013. Now I'd make some healthier Primal treats and actually feel like it would mean even more. At work, we have fruit on Friday, says Tracy. Tracy, that's a really, really, really good point, trying to change the workplace. Samuel says, Dan, what would you suggest someone takes instead that's easy for the staff to eat on the go, but also healthy?
I think it's a very, very difficult one at the moment, really, because of the whole coronavirus thing, really. But certainly for me, and yes, we can probably get into the whole different debate about whether fruit is actually healthy or not. But I think we can all agree that it's probably a healthier choice than chocolates. And in terms of something like that would be great. But of course, as I just mentioned, the issue is, of course, things in packets, things, fingers and that in terms of food, you're probably going to find that not a lot of people are kind of happy about eating that kind of thing at the moment. So this is a big issue at the moment. So I don't really have any, bright ideas here. It might be something that's not food related, like Steve was suggesting.
Yeah, well, we'll see what Lou has to add on this one as well, because obviously that's an area Lou's spent a lot of time looking at. But if you can't, I mean, the thing is, if it's got to be in a packet, well, very rarely natural food comes in a packet. That's the thing we've been advertising for the last couple of years. If it's in a packet, you should probably avoid it. We want to go down.
If it's got a packet and an ingredients list, it's probably not particularly healthy, is it? So it's by definition pretty much processed in some respects if it's got an ingredients list, but yeah,
I think a nice card, a lovely written letter from the heart, a nice book, anything other than feeding people food they shouldn't be eating. Sheila says, I used to make unhealthy sweet bakes for church. Since being keto, I have switched to making healthy options using avocado, ground almonds, seeds, stevia, and cream cheese. Went down a treat. Well done, awesome. Sheila. You are certainly helping out your community there. Andrew says, just finished a Flu Fighters. Flu Fighters is the new book from Patrick Holford. And he says, concise, fact-based, and very interesting, worthy of a read. Thank you, Patrick. Leah's just joined us, said, my 2-year-old grandson never has had sweet chocolates or juice. I understand why, but others see it as cruel and an enigma. He's got books, etc. at Easter or Xmas while people wish people would stop pressurizing. He is my sunshine. So there's Leah, gone against the norm, made a stance, cut out the sweets, the chocolates and the juices, even at Christmas, and other people are saying she's cruel. And yet we know she's absolutely brilliant. So well done, Leah. And that's the problem, isn't it? Going against, at the moment we're going against the norm, which we've got to try and change what the norm looks like. Dan, can you stay on for a bit and get Lou on and see if we have a three-way conversation? Brilliant. Okay, well, we're going to try and get Lou Walker. Hello. In fact, there she is. Hello, Lou. How are you?
Hi, Lou.
Hello, Dan. Hello, Steve. How are you?
I'm very, very good. Thank you. Now, we first met at Real Food Rocks up in the Lake District last year on what started off a very wet weekend, but ended up being fantastic. And back then you were telling me about the cake culture of the UK. Microphone's yours. Tell us what you've been researching, what you've been finding out, and how we can take the research you've done and try and help promote health and happiness throughout the NHS.
Oh, well, I have to say, well, thanks very much for asking. I have to say that all the research I've done is based on offices, workplaces like that, not the NHS, but whenever I've spoken about it, people say, oh, you need to do some research in the NHS, you need to do some work in hospitals. So I've got quite a lot of anecdotal stuff, but my background is in the corporate world. And I was doing a master's in obesity and weight management and had to do some research. So I wanted to do some research that was relevant to my background. So office cake was something that everybody spoke about and everybody gets very angry about and fed up about, but there's no data. So I did a big survey, got data from about just under 1,000 office workers in the UK, and asked them, there we go, that's my website, lovely. Asked them what I wanted to find out a bit about what cake culture was, how people responded and behaved, and how much cake they actually ate, and also what they thought about the whole thing. And it ended up being that it's such a rich data set. I honestly don't think I've finished. looking at it yet, but shall I tell you a bit about what we found?
Yes, please do. Please do.
All right. Well, office cake is in about 86% of the workplaces that I sort of polled, at least once or twice a week, probably more. And in 10% it's every single day. It definitely changes people's behavior because, as you've all been saying, you know, when the cake's there, people can't help it. There's lots of reasons we can go into about that. But if there's something sugary and delicious in front of you, it's very, very hard to resist it. So if cake's there, people eat it. 36%, if it was there, said they'd never refused it. So, you know,
Wow.
so it's going to change people's eating behavior because if it's there, they're going to eat it, which increases their sugar intake, etc. But it changes the workplace environment as well. I mean, whatever your workplace is, whether it's a hospital ward or an office or a shop or whatever, go and put a load of cakes and sweets and pastries in it, and it's an unhealthier workplace, isn't it? So that makes it very difficult. People were saying it makes it difficult to eat healthily. Made it, a third said it was hard for them to stick to a weight loss diet. A third said they thought it, 60% thought it was made it hard to stick to a diet. Over a third said it was, they thought they'd put on weight. Over a third said they found it hard to eat healthily at work. Really, so there's a lot of downsides. The upside, and there are upsides, was that around 80% said it brought people together and 80% said it cheered people up, which is really interesting. So we can talk about that. So there's good things. We do celebrate around food, don't we? We eat around food, we feast, we celebrate, we commiserate. It's an important part of society, and that's relevant. But I think the really key thing that blew my mind, and this is what I've been focusing on really ever since, when I've been thinking about cake, and that is, well, I asked people, and I know you know the answer, so it's not a lot of point of me asking you, but I asked, there was a question, it was a multiple choice on the survey, and I said, okay, what is the ideal frequency for office cake? How often should we have it? What would be ideal? And so the options were every day, twice a week, once a week, once a fortnight, once a month, or never. And 95% said once a week or less.
Wow.
So whatever people think about office cake, and when I say cake, we're talking about treats, pizzas, samosas, biscuits, whatever. Whether people think it's a good thing or a bad thing, or whether we're big enough and grown up enough to make our own decisions, you don't have to eat it if you don't want it, but don't stop me from eating it, sort of thing. It doesn't matter which side of the argument you come from, people think once a week or less is enough.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely, that's really important, because if we could manage that, you could have the coming together and the bonding and the building relationships and make cake a bit special again. But at the moment, it's not very special, because if you have something every day, it's not special. And you get the bonding thing. So, you know, it's really interesting. That's it in a nutshell. I could go on forever because there's so much to it.
No, I mean, it's really, really highlighted some important things there. I mean, 1 or 2 minutes in, I was thinking, right, I'm going to go to work. As you were speaking then, I was going, right, I'm going to work on Monday. I'm going to pull up all your research. I'm going to tell all my managers, all my directors that run my companies, and I'm going to tell them, all right, no more cakes. Because, you know, 86% have never, 36% have never refused. 86% you said have it more than once a week in the office. I'm sure my companies fall into that.
Oh, at least.
So at the beginning I was like, well, that's it, we're just going to ban it. But then you said, but it brings people together. So now I'm thinking, well, if we ban it, what do we replace it with? Because we're going to have to replace it with something, because certainly my company, the community spirit is, we're an employee-owned company. So the employees actually own the company. So we're very much into, you know, bringing everybody together daily, twice daily, weekly, a very sociable company. So what could we replace the cake and the pizza with? And by the way, cakes tend to be brought in by team members, but pizzas, sadly, even in my own company, are still brought in by managers as a thank you for extra shifts, and because it's the easiest thing to quickly go and order from a takeaway, you know, 20 pizzas, and 20 different
Gorgeous.
flavors, and everybody's happy. And I'm ashamed that I allow that in my company. But what can we do instead, do you think?
Oh, there's so much there. Don't be ashamed. First of all, don't be ashamed, Steve. Don't be ashamed. But I've got some ideas, and on the website and in the research, there's plenty of ideas. But you know what? I think if everybody in your situation as a manager or leader wants to know what to do or how to best tackle this, ask your people.
Yeah.
Talk to them. Start
Yeah.
a conversation. Because my suspicion is that if we've got all this cake treating, rewarding happening so much, even though we all know that it's not a great idea, I think it's happening because people are quietly thinking, oh gosh, not again. Oh God, like, it's really nice, but this is the 4th time this week. But nobody's going to say anything because they look around and see everybody else enjoying it. And aren't you going to be the complete killjoy, Billy No Mates, if you're the one that says, oh, sorry, I don't think we should be doing this? I think people are afraid to bring it up. So the cake continues and becomes more popular, not because everybody wants it, but because nobody is comfortable saying anything about it. So if we could, I think if leaders and managers and people like you, Steve, could make it easier for people to have that conversation. So you could go into the office tomorrow and say, right, we had Lou Walker on yesterday. She was talking about cake culture. I've done a couple of infographics. They're on the website. Sort of chuck them around the office a bit and say, well, what do you think? What should we do? How should we deal with this? And see what people say. Because if it's their ideas, my ideas might be great, but they're not as good as their ideas. So I'd ask your colleagues and say, what do you think? I mean, if it's not cakes, it could be, everybody could bring in something to share for lunch.
Yeah.
And then you've got the sharing, that sort of, work colleagues who eat together, there's research that shows that work colleagues that eat together have better cooperation, trust and performance. But it's the eating together. So often what happens with cake in offices is that 3/4 of the respondents said, oh, it's just plonked on the side in the morning, and an email goes round and you help yourself. So there's no togetherness there. There's no sociability. There's no social gathering, and there's no togetherness. So, there are ways of having the eating together, but maybe not cake. So ask your people. Ask your people.
In India, which is where we've probably got most of our employees, that culture of taking a proper lunch together, but taking it in turns. They all come in with 4 or 5 different pots each, and it's all shared. And too much bread, if you ask me, but and hence too much diabetes in India going off the scale at the moment. But that's something we've got to try and tackle. But that togetherness is phenomenal to see. Phenomenal to see. And
one thing that hasn't been forgotten in India is fasting.
True.
Because that's still very much a part of the culture, religious culture in India, is that that we've very much lost over here. The fact that it's okay to feast every once in a while, and that's where a lot of our kind of religious feast days and Christmas and things like that came from. But we've also completely forgotten the fast days that went along with it. And it was took me by a bit of surprise when you're going for a guided tour in India, and you stop for some food and your guide's not eating, and you say, well, you're not going to join us for some food. No, I'm fasting today. But very, very normal.
Yeah. Well, that norm thing is really important, Dan, isn't it? And Steve, you mentioned it earlier about what's normal. And if it's normal in a workplace, say you're new, and it's all a bit strange at the moment because so many people aren't going to their workplace as normal, but which maybe is a great opportunity for building some new habits. But if you're in your office and it's normal that everybody takes in cakes on the birthday, or they bring cakes back if they've traveled abroad or whatever, if that's the normal thing, you're going to want to try and fit in with that. That's what humans do. We're herd animals. So we try to ingratiate. But if it became a bit more normal, or around here we only have cakes on Friday, and on Friday we have it at 4:00, and we really look forward to it. It's a big deal. Everybody gets together. That's how we do it here, and that's that would be the norm in that place. And so it would be great to create some new norms, but you can't just say from above, right, this is our new norm, this is what we're doing, we're not having cake. you know, a culture comes from the people, so you have to talk to your colleagues. And the other interesting really thing is about alternatives. So many people say, oh, but if we're not having cake, what are we going to have instead? And so back to Dan talking about fasting, actually, we don't need to snack every 5 minutes, do we? I mean, if you could just go between breakfast and lunch, and then for lunch and supper, actually we'd all be a lot healthier, whether we ate pasta, bread, rice or potatoes or not. So it's this, there is an assumption, and again, it's a cultural norm in workplaces now that you have to have something, and it takes a brave person to challenge that. But that's why I think the key to all of this is having a conversation. I'd love to just get people talking about it. And, and if there's now
they are talking about it. Should we? Yeah. Shall we have a look?
Oh, yeah.
So where do we go? Bernie says, going away from food, take them hand cream made from natural products, as their hands will be so dry and suffering from constant hand washing and antibacterial gels. I think that one's aimed at what should we take our brilliant nurses and doctors. But absolutely,
absolutely brilliant.
What do you feel, Dan, if somebody dropped you in some hand cream?
Nice idea. Yeah, it's a nice idea, definitely. I think that would be nice, especially if they were in, like, I think again at the moment, especially if they're in kind of individualized bottles and stuff that were kind of take homeable, that would be that would be a nice nice thing, really. Yeah, but you know, a little gift set like that would be you know, infinitely more and very thoughtful. I think that would go down great, especially if you got a handwritten note. I know you're washing your hands a lot at the moment, so here's a little something to take home and treat yourself with, you know.
Well, that's lovely, because it is a little bit different. And if you're always it's lovely. All cakes and thank yous, they all come from a place of generosity and kindness, don't they? But if you're taking in something that clearly, I don't know, it's not that difficult to take in a box of chocolates or a box of donuts or something. But if you've made those, I don't know. I mean, somebody a friend of mine locally, she's a nurse, and she got home. This is really quite at the beginning of lockdown. And she said all the key workers in her street got home that day and found a little bunch of daffodils and forget-me-nots and a little handmade card from some kids in the street. Brilliant. And because it was really different, and it really, somebody put some effort into that's what makes a difference. So, I mean, you mentioned curry. I've seen a couple of people on Twitter, health workers, recently saying, "Oh, somebody brought a curry in; it was fantastic." Yeah, which is it's a bit different.
Yeah,
and the other thing is, Dan and I, we both tend to cook the same ways. We both tend to cook in bulk, because you know you can't cook every day of the week because we just haven't got the time for that. But if you've got 3 hours free on a Sunday, we cook in bulk. What a great thing. You know, Monday, take some curries in and share the love with the curry or whatever you've made. Norma says, I would like to thank you all. You're experts, and Jack, you get mentioned here, Jack. In 3 weeks of watching this program, my bloods have gone down from 19.5 to 8.4. I'm cooking healthy food and experimenting, moving more, and feeling great, so thank you. Oh, Norma, that's absolutely brilliant. Well done indeed. That helps. That, you know, back to the whole thing of gifting cakes is all about showing your appreciation. That will motivate me and Jack to carry on doing this. Just one story is enough. Gemma says, cake culture is out of control in my small office. Cake is brought in at least twice a week. I never comment. I just say, no, thank you. It's easier not to talk about it. What do other people do? I mean, that's bang on the money there.
Can I tell you what happened in my kind of workspace? Okay, so when I discovered my kind of like weight loss, when I started my weight loss journey, I was working as a GP in a regular surgery at that time, and it quickly became a hot topic. So much so that patients were coming in having heard about the shrinking doctor, but it, you know, it was a great jumping off point for a conversation, and actually it made a collective decision that they would not have biscuits in the cupboards anymore, and that this was what the management of the surgery used to buy to keep everyone happy, and it became a collective decision. They actually replaced that with fruit, so it came on that there was like a fresh bowl of fruit in the surgery on a weekly basis rather than biscuits in the cupboards. So I think it's about starting these conversations off. What have you got there, Steve?
That's you in your larger days as a GP.
Yeah.
Yeah, and before anybody thinks I'm having a go at Dan on the page before, there's me in my larger days. Thank you. My son's favourite slide comes up yet again. Oh dear me. So that's great to hear. But sorry, Dan, I interrupted you there. Carry on, mate, because it's fascinating.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's just
those around you saw that you were making a real effort, and then had to change sort of what they were stocking in the GP.
Wanted to change because the conversation was started, Steve, and I think this is what Lou's getting at, is somebody's got to start that conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, whether it comes from management, whether it comes from within. And, it's like any change, Steve, somebody's got to start it. Somebody has to be the first one to speak up, else the status quo never gets challenged. And, this is really, really difficult. And, this is one of the ways many people, think that this change needs to come from a political perspective, and I think there's so many vested interests with food and pharmaceutical companies being amongst the largest taxpayers, that it's actually going to be incredibly difficult to achieve a political solution to this. Although, of course, we're seeing stuff like the sugar tax and stuff, so it's not completely without merit. But actually, there's something to be said for just getting the word out there and spreading it one person to one person. Oh, such and such has lost weight on Dan's program or something, after watching Dan's YouTube videos. You need to go and watch those videos. You need to join that program and stuff, because it works. And then it spreads, Steve, and it spread within my surgery. It spreads in a really, really positive way, as people are inspired by actual real change they can see, and people succeeding in the long term. And do you know what, Steve? It gets quite infectious, this kind of stuff, doesn't it? Because once you have these amazing lifestyle changes, you kind of want to shout about it, and it has quite a large impact on people's lives. I know it certainly had a big impact on mine. I know for sure it's had a huge impact on yours, Steve, in terms of changing the direction, launching new businesses off the back of this stuff, which we've both done as a result of this. So and people become very ambassadorial, and that's what Lou, you're part of the ambassadors program for the Public Health Collaboration, aren't you?
I am, and the Real Food Campaign. I'm not ambassador, I'm on the steering committee for the Real Food Campaign, all the same sort of thing. But you're so right. It's if we could start a conversation, get a few people talking about it, and it spreads, little ripples. So when I first did my TED talk a couple of years ago now, I don't know who this lady was, but she got in touch somehow with me through Facebook, and she said, I watched your TED talk and I shared it, or I told my colleagues. She led a team of 10 people, and she started her next weekly big team meeting, to which she always took a cake, because she was a nice lady, and that's what she did. And she said, listen, I've seen this TED talk all about this cake culture, and it says that 95% of people only want the cake once a week or less. I mean, 41% said once a month. That's nearly half saying once a month would be anyway. And she said, what shall I do? What shall we do in this team? And she said, you don't have to tell me now if you feel uncomfortable. You can write it down and we'll do a secret ballot. But I'm really interested. Shall I keep making a cake for our team meeting, or shall I not? And they said, oh, no, don't worry. We don't need a secret ballot. It's so nice of you to make a cake, and we really appreciate it. But do you know what? We're all trying to watch our waste, and we're trying to, eat healthily. So, and so it was her brave conversation. Oh, quite brave conversation. But she didn't have to put herself on the line. She just said, "Here's some research. Here's some data. What do you think?" Yeah. And it started the conversation. And what's happened in that team ever since is that they've stopped doing the cakes, and they've said, well, what could we do instead? And they've decided, I mean, now I don't think they do anything instead, but at first they said, well, let's have fruit. So that's sort of like a halfway house. But after a while, then they sort of said, well, what else can we do to be healthy? So a load of them decided that every week, all of them, they can't all go together because the team is, somebody's got to man the phones, but every week, all of them are determined that they will go out for a walk at lunchtime.
Brilliant.
So that they're getting some exercise. So it starts with one thing, which might be cake, and then it moves to a little bit of exercise, and they think, oh, I feel a little bit better. Oh, let's all do a yoga. I don't know what, but apparently it all sort of built and built. And then other teams in the office start seeing that this team's doing something different, and they're all disappearing for walks at lunchtime and then doing park run together. I mean, one little conversation is where it started, and look where the ripples take you. And that's what this is all about. I think that's the powerful thing. I mean, people do get angry about it, and there's a lot of people that will say, oh, for heaven's sake, you know, what's the harm in having a bit of cake? And we know there is no harm in having a bit of cake, but if you're diabetic, there probably is. And if you have a little bit of cake, it's never occasional, is it? No. It's all the time, and it builds up and builds up, and so. But yeah, the ripples. Well, start talking.
Talking of ripples, Lou, I actually think I'll be honest. When you told me about this research, when we met last year, I thought, oh, that's nice to do, but whatever. But now, hearing what you've just said, I think you may be the ripple that changes the country, because, you know, I need something to go back and point people to, because I'm just the nutcase that's always going on about it.
Yeah.
If I go back and point people to your infographics, then people, I think, will listen, and then, so let's try and get as many business leaders to your website and your infographics as possible.
Thank you, yes.
Because that could be the change, that could be the catalyst. And Norma, who said in the last 3 weeks of watching the programme, she's also lost, Dan, 3.5 kg in 3 weeks.
It's fantastic, and I think it underlines the point that it doesn't need to be huge amounts of time to see these changes. They actually happen pretty rapidly, and I think people see as weight loss as, you know, big weight loss as something that happens over several years perhaps. But actually people can lose a lot of weight in a relatively short space of time, you know, consistently, and actually have meaningful health changes within, you know, I think David Unwin says that the shortest he's seen someone reverse their type 2 diabetes is just over a month.
Wow. That's
Didn't
amazing.
Somebody say 19 days?
Probably, Lou,
but
yeah,
even less than that. And the weight loss is the bit you see, isn't it? I mean, imagine if somebody's losing weight, particularly from around their waist, imagine all the good stuff that's going on the inside that you can't see.
Yeah,
you know, I think yeah.
Absolutely. Sheila says, don't really want to lower cholesterol, really. Cholesterol is good for health and not the demon it is purported to be. Sheila commenting probably on yesterday, which was all about cholesterol and the heart. Susan says, thank you for what you're all doing. I've been eating primally for 9 weeks and the weight is going. I love this. I'm 74. How can I prevent saggy skin when I've lost even more weight? Any tips for reducing saggy skin, doctor?
It's a very difficult one because typically as you get older, you lose the elasticity in your skin. So the older you are, the more likely you are to have these excessive skin when you've lost weight. Obviously, the more weight you have in the first place, that can be another thing. Jason Fung's got some interesting thoughts on this one, particularly when it comes to fasting. He believes that the fasting can actually help with the skin issue there, and he has said that he doesn't see it as a big problem in his clinics, despite people losing significant amounts of weight, and that may be to do with something called autophagy or autophagy that is stimulated, this intracellular reuptake cleaning process, like a decluttering process for the inside of your cells that goes on. We don't have any hard research about this. We don't have any particular, and this is all kind of like people thinking about it, but that may be something that helps.
Yeah, fasting and autophagy, you said there, Jason Fung's written brilliantly about it. Also, if you get the hybrid diet by Jerome and Patrick Holford, there's a lot in there about autophagy. Also, hydration is important, is it not? So drinking plenty of water, anything that it can help the body produce more collagen. So if you're 74, you probably remember bone broth. So bone broth is really high in helping support collagen, hydration, and exercise as well, I would have thought, Dan. Well done though, Susan. Absolutely fantastic. Nice to hear people that are, you know, taking their health into their own matters, you know, in their 70s as well. Wish I could get my dad to do more of that, and he's 79. 80 this week, my dad. Sheila says, in fact, I've just missed out a few. I don't want to miss any of these out. They're all great. Andrew says, we have Cheesy Tuesday at my work. Chutney, cheese and fruit selection. That is brilliant. Well done, Andrew. Leah says, laugh out loud. Steve, is it not birthday week for you at Jewelry Maker? It is, but we won't be having cakes if I can get there in time. Sheila says, I practice intermittent fasting eating OMAD. That's one meal a day for the past 4 months. Weight stable, even though eating lots of natural, healthy fat and meats. No carbs. Cholesterol probably high. Well, we're not worried too much about cholesterol. Not if you're eating natural, wholesome food. Marvelous says, no political. This is an individual decision. Just take charge and one must be responsible. Me talking after just sneaking a biscuit with my teeth this morning.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah, sure.
I'd really love to. That's a point of view I hear so often, and we've all got an element of responsibility. But the tricky thing with sugar, and you guys know this, but the tricky thing with sugar in particular, but food in general, is that we think we're in control of ourselves, and it's all just about our decision whether or not to eat a cake. It's not. There's something about 200 food-based decisions that we make every day that we're not even aware of. They're automatic. We're programmed to spot and respond to sweet, palatable, energy-dense food, and it's what's kept us alive and evolving very well for the last, 150,000 years. But we're programmed to notice the sweet food. There's this. And the pleasure that we get from it, the dopamine hit that we get when we have the food is what drives us to have, to go and find it again. We don't even realize, but when we're just bimbling around every day, our brain, we're not aware of it, but our brain is spotting food the whole time, and it goes berserk. And, when it spots something sweet. So all this brain and body chemistry is happening behind the scenes without us realizing, that's saying, go on, there's some food there, there's some sugar there, get it, go and eat it. So it's willpower is part of it, perhaps. You don't have to rely on your willpower quite as much if it's not there in the first place, which is where the conversation comes in. And what a great opportunity, Steve. Is it your birthday this week?
It's one of our company's birthday, Jewelry Maker. And
opportunity to start a conversation.
Absolutely, we always celebrate our birthdays with our customers. My dad's birthday is on Wednesday, and my mum's the following week. So lots of birthdays to try and avoid the cake and put something else out instead. But I'm totally with you, because this is the whole point, Marvelous. And I understand what you're saying. People should just take more responsibility for themselves. But I'm totally with you, Lou, that it's not that easy. When food's in front of you, and you're right, the primal evolution of man, and this is why we have this hormone called leptin that's supposed to tell the brain to stop eating. It's supposed to tell the brain we're full, don't eat anymore. But it doesn't work so well with carbohydrates. And my hypothesis is that fruit comes on the trees and the bushes in autumn, so that we would go and gorge on it, so that we did put on plenty of body weight to help us get through the winter, where it would be harder to catch animals, where there would be no food to forage. So therefore, we're designed to overload on carbohydrates as a protective mechanism to get us through the very lean winters. So if that hormone called leptin that's supposed to tell you you're full was to tell you were full after you'd had one apple, well, then you're not going to eat as much as you need to eat to get you through the winter. So my hypothesis goes that leptin works brilliantly for protein and fats, but has to ignore carbohydrates to a large extent, so that we can gorge and gorge and gorge and gorge on the apples. Now, that survived us for millions of years because it was only an event that happened maybe to 2 or 3 or 4 weeks a year. The problem these days is we have processed carbs every single day, and that's that crash that we get straight after eating them. And what I'd never thought about till you just mentioned it though, Lou, is that the brain subconsciously, and that's part of survival probably, is constantly looking for the next meal. And if you put a cake in front of somebody, especially if they're very, very busy and they're at work, your brain won't be focusing properly. It will just go grab, take it, and then 10 minutes later, some people will just think, oh, that's okay. Others will be regretting it instantly, but they would have subconsciously just eaten it.
Yeah, exactly. And then they'll need another one because that's what sugar makes you do. So it's a really complex thing. I mean, so willpower's important. It runs out after a while. So lots of people in that situation where the cake or whatever is available all day long and every time you wander past to the kitchen or to go to the stairs or something, you have to walk past the cakes, and you can resist it perhaps until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, where all our biorhythms take a bit of a deep dive, and our willpower is used up for the day. So that's when we succumb to a muffin, So, but it is more complex and do you know, men and women behave. That's another big part of the research. Men and women respond very differently and have very different opinions and behaviours around office cake. The blokes are more likely, and this is well backed up in research, and there were statistically significant differences. More men are likely, and I'm sorry, men, but this is statistically significant data, and it matches all the other data about gender and sex and eating. But the blokes were more likely to be the ones going, oh, come on, just if you don't want it, don't have it. Where's the problem? And the women are the ones going, oh, I really shouldn't have it. I don't want to have it, but I can't. Oh, it's there, and it puts them off and it's distracting. So there's a difference in gender in our approach. There's a difference in our age groups, and I think that's probably in terms of your reaction and behavior around office cake. So if you're Steve, yours and my age group, we're far less likely to sort of approve of it. But if you're a millennial, if you're below the age of 30, you're more likely to think, cake, great, that's marvelous. What a lovely way to say thank you. What a lovely way to reward and recognize. Yeah. Because that's what that's what the culture has been doing. But older people over the age of 50 were thinking, what? No, it's not a good way to reward people. It's not a good way to say thank you. But that's a cultural difference in the way we've been brought up as millennial, generational.
Absolutely. If I can, because I know we're coming towards the end, but if I can we just go to the scoreboard a few more times? Because Gandalf says, I know of a GP practice where one of the senior members chucks away sweets and gifts from patients straight into the bin. Not in front of them, of course. She's seen as a villain by the others in the practice. Jackie says, today we're having slow roasted naked lamb with leeks and some berries and cream for dessert. Yum, yum. Way to go, Jackie. Donald Collins says, great chat all. Let's create a social movement to empower the people to change. The system will need to catch up. It will not change on its own. And Donald is a GP, by the way. Susan says, thanks, I drink hot water all the time and now only eat between 4 and 7:30 p.m. Well done, Susan. Laugh out loud. By the way, you made me sound old at 74. I'm not. I just was born early. Do you know what, Susan? Let me take that back if I made you feel old. 74 is really... Donald says, we need to change our environment, our cupboards, our tribes who like healthier eating, workplaces, etc. This is key. This is where we need help. And I would say, Donald, you're right. Let's all go and look at Lou Walker's charts and infographics and share that with our management teams. Again, what a great hour of info, says Leah. And well, we'll leave that there. Well done. Thank you to everybody, by the way, commenting. Really, really kind of you to give us so many thoughts. Dan, Lou, thanks for sharing time with us this morning.
It's great. Thank you. It's nice to have Dan on the whole time as well.
Hey.
Yeah, really appreciate that, Dan. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
Lou. Thank
that.
you, Steve.
Are you off walking the dog now?
I will be. Yeah, I think so. Definitely. I think it's heading next to lunchtime, near to lunchtime. So I think a bit of cooking today, Steve. So I got the largest cauliflower.
Have you?
Yeah, that needs a. I'm going to roast up a whole cauliflower, which is going to be fantastic. So really excited to get that one in the oven, and yeah, it's going to be a good lunch today. So yeah, absolutely, and then maybe a dog walk this afternoon.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you, Dr. Dan. And Lou, absolutely brilliant having you on. Learned so much. And we've had more comments today than ever before. So I think you've proven to be I think you've really proven to be an inspiration to so many people. And just made us, I'm definitely going to make some actions myself. So I don't know, it's a straw poll of one, but I'm going to check out your infographics, take your research, put it with all the managers and say, come on, it's time to change.
Start a conversation. That's all we need to do.
Yeah,
Start
brilliant.
somewhere.
Thank you both. It's been absolutely brilliant having you on the show. Really, really appreciated.
Okay, great. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Take care.
Wow. Thanks, Dan. Wasn't that fantastic? I thought Lou Walker there was absolutely brilliant with her research. And it does just take one individual to go and, so we're going to have to change something. And all that research she's done, I think, will lead to many workplaces changing their approach to the gifting and the cakes and the pizzas and so on. And hopefully we learned from Dan there about what else could we be giving. We must not, certainly right now, stop appreciating our nurses and our doctors and our care workers, but what other ways can we say thank you rather than just dropping in some cake or biscuits? I'll leave you with that thought. Thank you very, very much for spending your time with us this Sunday. If you can set the notification bell below, that would be great. If you can subscribe to this channel, then every couple of days or so we put up new healthy recipes, so please do subscribe. If you can share it and let your friends and loved ones know that we're here, again, the more we can spread the word about being healthy. You've heard from some brilliant people that are viewers today, how this show has helped them start to turn around their own health and well-being. The more you can share it, the better. And we will be joining you again at the same time tomorrow. For now, stay safe, God bless, and we'll spend time with you tomorrow.